In a significant development for the U.S. economy and international trade relations, U.S. markets saw a positive upswing in early trading on May 29, 2025, following a federal court ruling that blocked a series of tariffs imposed by the Trump administration. This court decision not only sent ripples through the financial sectors but also sparked renewed interest in the potential for a trade deal between the United Kingdom and the United States. The ruling specifically addressed the controversial 10% tariffs that had been a major sticking point in negotiations between the UK and the US. Trade expert Dmitry Grozubinski remarked on the implications of this decision during an interview with the BBC World Service's World Business Report. He noted, "The biggest criticism of the UK deal was that it left the US 10% Liberation Day tariffs in place. It didn't challenge them, and it kind of gave away the UK's ability to retaliate against them. With these tariffs now deemed illegal," Grozubinski suggested that the landscape for UK-US trade negotiations has become significantly more favorable for Britain. Now those 10% tariffs have been ruled illegal and the US will presumably have to get rid of them, he added, indicating that the UK might find itself in a stronger negotiating position. In light of this ruling, UK officials are eager to accelerate discussions around the trade deal, especially since no legal text has been finalized. Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds is scheduled to meet with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick at an upcoming OECD meeting in Paris, where trade discussions are likely to take center stage. This court decision marks yet another roadblock for the Trump administration's policy agenda, which has faced ongoing legal challenges. The ruling has not only elevated market confidence but also stirred discussions among American professionals, particularly in the healthcare sector, who are contemplating relocation to Canada to escape the political turmoil and regulatory uncertainties prevalent in the U.S. This trend reflects a growing frustration with the policies of the current administration and highlights the broader impacts of political decisions on professional choices. The day also brought news of Elon Musk's departure from the Trump administration, capping a tumultuous tenure characterized by significant public and political scrutiny. Musk's exit raises questions about the future direction of innovation and technology policy under the current administration. As the U.S. markets respond positively to the court ruling and stakeholders in the UK push for a more advantageous trade deal, the landscape of international trade continues to evolve. The impacts of the ruling are expected to shape not only the economic relations between the U.S. and the UK but also influence the broader spectrum of U.S. trade policies moving forward. With negotiations likely to heat up in the coming weeks, the business community will be keenly watching for further developments that could redefine trade dynamics across the Atlantic. In a dramatic turn of events, the U.S. Court of International Trade has ruled to block the majority of President Donald Trump's controversial global tariffs, deemed unlawful due to the manner in which they were enacted. This unexpected ruling puts a significant portion of the tariffs, particularly those targeting trade partners and key duties focused on China, on indefinite hold. However, the court has left some tariffs intact, including those concerning steel, aluminum, and specific Chinese goods. Despite this setback, analysts from Goldman Sachs suggest that the ruling may not deter Trump from pursuing his tariff agenda. Alec Phillips, chief U.S. political economist at Goldman Sachs, indicated that while this ruling increases uncertainty for the administration, it may not alter the final outcome for most major U.S. trading partners. "We expect the Trump administration will find other ways to impose tariffs," Phillips stated, highlighting the administration's resilience in navigating international trade dynamics. The court's decision comes on the heels of Trump's ongoing criticisms of Wall Street's reaction to his tariffs, particularly a new trading philosophy dubbed TACO, which stands for Trump Always Chickens Out. This term reflects a pattern where heavy tariff announcements lead to market turmoil only for Trump to later backtrack, resulting in a market rebound. In response to a reporter's question regarding the term, Trump dismissed it as nasty, asserting that his approach is part of a broader negotiation strategy aimed at gaining leverage in trade discussions. Negotiations have been particularly active this week, with reports emerging that India has offered the U.S. significant tariff cuts, albeit while seeking to maintain high duties on certain agricultural products. Additionally, the European Union's trade chief Maros Sefcovic has indicated that the EU is exploring collaborative efforts with the US in critical sectors such as semiconductor, steel, and aerospace, areas that could be affected by Trump's tariff policies. The implications of these tariffs are being felt acutely across corporate America. NVIDIA's CEO Jensen Huang has expressed concerns over export controls that limit the company's ability to ship products to China, while HP Incorporation reported an 8% drop in shares after lowering its profit outlook, attributing this to the economic impacts of ongoing tariffs. Meanwhile, retail giants like Macy's and Capri Holdings have also revised their earnings forecasts downward due to tariff-related uncertainties that are affecting consumer demand. Market reactions to the court's ruling have been mixed. While some investors celebrated the temporary relief from tariff pressures, analysts caution that the uncertainty surrounding the administration's next steps remains a source of concern. The ruling is viewed as a short-term victory for markets but does not eliminate the long-term risks associated with Trump's tariff policies and their potential escalation. As the Trump administration prepares to appeal the court's decision, the focus remains on future trade negotiations. The upcoming discussions with the EU and other trading partners will be crucial in determining the trajectory of U.S. trade policy. Observers are keenly watching how the administration will navigate these complexities, especially as the stakes continue to rise in the intricate landscape of global trade relations. In a significant setback for President Donald Trump, a federal court has ruled against his administration's attempt to impose sweeping tariffs under emergency powers, casting doubt on a key aspect of his economic policy. The U.S. Court of International Trade's ruling, which came on May 28, 2025, declares that the president overstepped his authority by invoking the International Emergency Economic Powers Act (IEPA) to levy tariffs targeting nearly all trading partners, including allies like Canada and Mexico. This decision not only disrupts Trump's aggressive trade strategies but also raises questions about the future of U.S. trade relations globally. The court's three-judge panel found that Trump's tariffs exceeded the legal boundaries set by the IEPA, which primarily governs trade embargoes and sanctions without explicitly granting the president the power to impose tariffs. The judges stated the worldwide and retaliatory tariff orders exceed any authority granted to the president by IEPA to regulate importation by means of tariffs. This ruling effectively invalidates what Trump labeled his Liberation Day tariffs, aimed at compelling foreign nations to renegotiate trade agreements more favorable to the U.S. White House spokesperson Kush Desai defended the administration's position, arguing that the ongoing trade deficits constitute a national emergency that has adversely affected American communities and the defense industrial base. He asserted it is not for unelected judges to decide how to properly address a national emergency. Despite this claim, the court maintained that the president's rationale for declaring an emergency was legally unfounded, particularly given that the U.S. has run a trade deficit for 49 consecutive years. The implications of this ruling are far-reaching. Economists and analysts have warned that Trump's tariffs have already shaken global financial markets and contributed to a downgrading of U.S. economic growth projections. The ruling could hinder ongoing negotiations with multiple countries, as Trump's administration had relied heavily on the prospect of imposing tariffs to leverage better trade terms. Following the court's decision, stock markets reacted positively, reflecting investor relief at the potential easing of trade tensions. Trump's legal team has signaled its intent to appeal the ruling, with an emergency stay request already in the works. If granted, this would allow the administration to maintain the status quo on tariffs while the appeal unfolds. However, the court's decision does not affect tariffs imposed under other legal frameworks, such as those on steel, aluminum, and automobiles, which remain intact. The legal challenges to Trump's tariffs have highlighted a broader conflict over presidential powers in trade policy. The court's ruling reinforces the constitutional principle that Congress holds exclusive powers to regulate commerce with foreign nations, a fact that could constrain the executive branch's ability to unilaterally dictate trade terms. As the administration navigates these legal waters, it remains uncertain how this ruling will shape the future of U.S. trade policy and international relations. With the possibility of further appeals and alternative legal avenues for imposing tariffs still on the table, the administration may seek to regroup and redefine its approach to trade negotiations. The ongoing saga of Trump's tariffs illustrates not only the complexities of international trade but also the significant legal hurdles that can arise when executive powers are tested. Looking ahead, the evolving landscape of U.S. trade policy promises to be a critical area of focus as the administration seeks to balance economic interests with legal constraints. With the court's ruling serving as both a challenge and an opportunity for re-examination, the coming weeks and months will be pivotal in determining the trajectory of Trump's trade agenda. In a significant legal victory for those opposing President Donald Trump's trade policies, the U.S. Court of International Trade has ruled against the sweeping global tariffs that the president imposed on a vast array of imported goods. This ruling, delivered on May 29, 2025. Marks a pivotal moment in the ongoing trade war that has disrupted international markets and strained relations with key allies. The court determined that Trump's invocation of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act (IEPA) did not grant him the authority to impose such extensive tariffs unilaterally. The ruling underscores the constitutional authority of Congress over trade regulations, stating that the president's powers to safeguard the economy do not supersede this legislative prerogative. This decision has prompted the White House to seek a stay of the ruling while appealing the court's decision, setting the stage for a protracted legal battle. The lawsuit was sparked by challenges from the nonpartisan Liberty Justice Center, representing small businesses adversely affected by the tariffs, alongside a coalition of state governments. Their contention was that the tariffs, which encompassed duties on imports from nearly every nation, were not only economically harmful but also unconstitutional. The court's three-judge panel articulated that the IEPA, established in 1977, does not authorize the president to impose such sweeping tariffs without congressional approval. The repercussions of the ruling are immediate and far-reaching. Stock markets responded positively, with gains in both Asian and U.S. markets following the announcement. This reaction reflects a broader optimism among investors regarding the potential easing of trade tensions and the stabilization of international trade relations. Letitia James, New York's Attorney General, celebrated the ruling, stating, "The law is clear. No president has the power to single-handedly raise taxes whenever they like." The administration's tariffs, particularly those targeting China, Canada, and Mexico, were designed to address trade imbalances and curb the flow of illegal drugs and immigration into the United States. However, the court's ruling effectively nullifies many of these tariffs, which had already caused significant disruptions in supply chains and increased costs for American consumers and businesses. Analysts, including those from Goldman Sachs, have noted that while the ruling presents an immediate setback for Trump's economic agenda, it also leaves open the possibility for the administration to impose tariffs under different legal frameworks. In the aftermath of the ruling, the White House has 10 days to complete the process of halting the tariffs. Should the appeal fail, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency would be tasked with issuing refunds for tariffs already collected. This situation raises critical questions about ongoing trade negotiations and the future landscape of U.S. trade policy. Industry experts predict that many nations may adopt a wait-and-see approach as they monitor developments in the appeals process. Moreover, the ruling casts uncertainty on recent trade agreements, including those between the U.S. and the United Kingdom, where tariffs on key exports were recently negotiated. With the blanket 10% tariff now in jeopardy, the UK government is working diligently to ensure that British businesses can still capitalize on the trade deal, although its implementation is now clouded by this judicial decision. As the legal and political ramifications unfold, the ruling could redefine the trajectory of U.S. trade policy. Trump's administration may still seek to leverage other legal avenues to impose tariffs, including those related to national security or unfair trade practices. However, the complexities of these frameworks require careful maneuvering and could further complicate an already fraught trade landscape. In conclusion, the court's decision not only represents a crucial victory for trade proponents but also signals a potential shift in the balance of power regarding trade policy in the United States. As the appeal process unfolds and the administration re-evaluates its strategy, stakeholders in global markets, businesses and governments alike will be watching closely to see how this legal battle may reshape the future of international trade under Trump's presidency. In a significant move aimed at enhancing operational efficiency within the Department of Defense, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has announced a comprehensive restructuring of the Office of the Director of Operational Test and Evaluation O.NE. This initiative, which comes as part of a broader campaign to cut perceived waste and redundancies within the federal government, could reshape how the Pentagon conducts its crucial weapons testing and evaluation processes. In a video released online on May 28, 2025, Hegseth emphasized that the reorganization is intended to ensure that U.S. warfighters receive the necessary tools and technologies more rapidly. "We must promote efficiency so that warfighters get what they need faster," he stated, underlining the urgency of adapting to modern military demands. The restructuring decision follows a comprehensive internal review which identified non-essential and redundant functions within O.NE that have hindered the military's ability to swiftly integrate advanced systems. In his memorandum to senior Pentagon leadership, Hegseth outlined specific directives beginning with an immediate elimination of redundant roles. Furthermore, the office will be downsized to a core staff of 30 civilian positions comprising 1 senior executive service member and a maximum of 15 military personnel. This reduction will be achieved through a targeted reduction in force RAF, effectively streamlining operations while retaining essential oversight capabilities. Prior to this reorganization, O.NE employed 94 personnel, which included 82 civilians and 12 military members. Those civilian employees not selected for retention will receive termination notices within a week of the memo's release. Notably, military departments' civilian personnel will revert to their respective service organizations while others will face dismissal. Sean Parnell, chief Pentagon spokesman and senior advisor, highlighted the intent behind these cuts, stating, "This decision eliminates redundancy in the defense acquisition system and empowers the services and combatant commands with greater trust to ensure the warfighter is efficiently equipped." He noted that the changes are expected to save the department over $300 million annually, a significant figure that underscores the administration's commitment to reforming the defense acquisition landscape. Despite the potential benefits, the announcement has not been without its detractors. A former senior defense official, speaking on condition of anonymity, expressed concerns regarding the implications of these cuts on the department's testing capabilities, particularly in the rapidly evolving fields of artificial intelligence and autonomous systems. The official pointed out that while the downsizing may streamline operations, it could also lead to critical testing shortcuts and slow down the development of essential technologies. "It's not quite as bad as skipping critical testing, but not far behind either," the source cautioned. In a bid to oversee this transition, Hegseth appointed Carol Quaid, the current deputy for test and evaluation within the Department of the Navy, as the new director of O.NE. This leadership change aims to facilitate the implementation of the new test and evaluation guidance, which includes directives to curtail contractor support within the office, further emphasizing the department's focus on internal capabilities. As the Pentagon embarks on this ambitious restructuring, the coming months will be crucial in determining its success. The impact of these changes on the defense acquisition process, as well as on the military's ability to adapt to emerging challenges, remains to be seen. With the stakes high, the department's approach to testing and evaluation will undoubtedly be a focal point for both policymakers and defense analysts in the future as they seek to balance efficiency with the imperative of maintaining military readiness in an increasingly complex global landscape. In recent months, President Donald Trump has taken a distinctly transactional approach to foreign policy, prioritizing economic agreements with allies over traditional diplomatic efforts with rivals.
This strategy has been particularly evident during his engagements in the Middle East and his handling of conflicts such as the ongoing war in Ukraine and the Israel-Hamas fighting. While Trump boasts of forging significant business deals with nations like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates, he has largely sidestepped the pressing humanitarian crises unfolding in these regions.
During a recent trip to the Middle East, Trump declared that the region is now defined by commerce, not chaos, and emphasized the importance of international economic partnerships,
where it exports technology, not terrorism,
and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence, Trump stated, showcasing his preference for deal-making over nuanced diplomacy. This mindset, according to Stephen Walt, a Harvard professor of international affairs, reflects Trump's comfort zone. Business deals are Trump's comfort zone, but when there's a genuine conflict of interest, that's where he struggles. While Trump's administration has focused on transactional agreements, analysts express concerns about the implications of sidelining diplomatic negotiations with adversaries. For instance, Trump's nonchalance regarding the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, where he has suggested the U.S. might take control to develop luxury properties, raises questions about the U.S.'s role in fostering peace. Critics argue that effective diplomacy often requires engaging with rivals to establish lasting resolutions, something Trump appears less equipped or willing to do. The administration's approach is further complicated by the reliance on Steve Witkoff, a close personal friend of Trump with limited diplomatic experience, who is now tasked with handling sensitive negotiations, including nuclear talks with Iran and ceasefire efforts in Gaza. Stephen Cook from the Council on Foreign Relations warns that this over-reliance on an inexperienced envoy could lead to significant miscalculations in complex international situations. Trump is miscalculating when he thinks that a deal's a deal. They're going to run into problems because the president wants to go with his gut, Cook noted. The situation becomes even more precarious when examining the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Trump has touted a recent minerals agreement with Ukraine as a step forward, but experts like Jeffrey Pyatt, a former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, emphasize that such agreements alone cannot resolve the deep-seated issues stemming from Putin's ambitions. Pyatt underscores that the war's roots lie in the actions of one man, Vladimir Putin. This war has its origin in the agenda of one man and his sacrifice of hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers who died in pursuit of his territorial ambitions, he stated. Despite rising tensions, Trump has remained vague about the U.S.'s commitment to applying pressure on Russia while exploring potential trade agreements with Moscow post-conflict, as European leaders prepare to ramp up sanctions against Russia. The Trump administration's hesitation to adopt a similar stance raises concerns about the U.S.'s commitment to collective defense efforts with its allies. In light of these complexities, Trump's recent warnings to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu not to interfere in U.S.-Iran nuclear negotiations highlight the delicate balancing act at play. During a briefing in the Oval Office, Trump underscored the importance of diplomacy, suggesting that the U.S. is approaching a crucial juncture in its relationship with Iran, where the outcomes could either lead to a beneficial agreement or escalate to conflict. As the international landscape continues to shift, Trump's foreign policy approach remains under scrutiny. Analysts warn that while a focus on economic agreements may provide short-term gains, it risks undermining long-term stability and the U.S.'s influence in critical geopolitical conflicts. The potential for future entanglements remains high, and the effectiveness of Trump's strategy will be tested as conditions evolve. Looking ahead, the upcoming NATO summit and ongoing negotiations will be pivotal in determining how the U.S. navigates its relationships with both allies and adversaries in an increasingly complex world.